Whether it's hanging half 100 on them at Owen Field or the run rules on the diamond at Love's Field, we're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Mainline Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jaquez.
Let's go! Let's go! Go!
Let's go. Welcome to the Mainline. I'm Adam Jaquez. He's Tyler Burton. Tyler, we've got one of the biggest matchups really in the last decade coming to Norman with College Game Day, with Tennessee. I don't know exactly what they're ranked. I really don't check the AP poll very much. I believe top 6 is what they are. So a huge matchup for us to discuss this evening.
Yeah, it's the biggest game in Norman probably since a decade. I know that there was a lot made around the game in 2020 for Bedlam. 2016, I believe, is what it was for Ohio State when they came to Norman. But I think that you've got to go all the way back to 2012 Notre Dame, where you've got a matchup that is this anticipated, that there's this much excitement around the Oklahoma fan base. You know, we've been looking forward to this matchup since the announcement to the SEC was made a couple of years ago. We really started to ramp up that anxiety and anticipation a little bit more once the schedule was announced. You know, Josh Heupel in Tennessee coming back, SEC opener, Nico however you say it. We just go Nico versus Jackson on this show. Adam might have a better way to say it. But yeah, the storylines surrounding this are second to none when you look at some of the premier matchups that are going to be, you know, on the college football slate all season long. And we've got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to briefly touch on Oklahoma's performance against Tulane from this past Saturday, how that projects, how it might translate into maybe a win, maybe a close loss against Tennessee this upcoming weekend. But I'm super excited about it, Adam. College Game Day's coming to town. Josh Pate's going to be in town. Tyler Burton's flying back from Denver. He's going to be in town.
Biggest name coming to town is Tyler Burton.
Biggest name coming to town. I'm excited to get back down there for it. So fly back into Oklahoma City on Friday afternoon. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. Cannot wait for this thing to get here.
Absolutely. Now, let's reflect a little bit on the Tulane game, because I thought it was a step in the right direction. I think it was one that maybe you didn't feel the best about, just in terms of, that middle of the third quarter going into the fourth quarter. It was a little uneasy there, but otherwise, outside of that, it felt like Oklahoma was in complete control of the game. It didn't feel like it was in doubt, other than that maybe 10-minute stretch or so in the second half. I was pretty pleased with where things were. It played out better than I expected. My score prediction, I think, was 34-23. So Oklahoma actually did better on defense, only giving up 13 points defensively than what I thought would happen. So walking out of the stadium, I was like, I didn't feel like it was the greatest result and how it played out, but overall it exceeded my expectations. And I think we saw a lot of good things, week to week development across the board for this team, stepping in the right direction.
It was definitely a lot better for at least the first half. On Saturday, you could definitely tell that Oklahoma did make some positive strides through the week of practice. They were able to get the running game going a little bit better. They were able to get Taylor Tatum and Javonte Barnes a little bit more involved in the passing game, which is something that we've been asking, for quite a while now, especially when you've got, a guy that is as elite and dynamic as Taylor Tatum. You've got to figure out some more creative ways to get him, get the ball out of the backfield outside of just a handoff. So I was happy that we saw that from Seth Luttrell. And I did like what Oklahoma did offensively, 5 for 5 in the red zone, coming away with 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals. Tyler Keltner was perfect on the day. The Sooners only averaged, however, Adam, 4.7 yards per play. You've got to figure out a way to get those numbers back up. You've got to figure out a way to connect for some more big plays in the running game, figure out a way to connect on some of those deep balls down the field. We'll see if Oklahoma is able to do that. They're going to have to this week against Tennessee. But Adam, I thought that the biggest thing that showed positivity for me coming out of this game offensively, the Sooners converted 8 of 16 third downs on Saturday. That was 50%. OU, the previous 2 games of the season, converted a mere 5 of 26 third down conversions. So definitely some steps in the right direction. But at the end of the day, as good as it looked, especially compared to the second half against Houston, there's still a lot of work that remains to be done for Oklahoma to get where they want to be as a football team.
In the first half, Oklahoma was 6 of 8 on third down conversions. That's 75%. I think that's the step in the right direction that you're looking for this from this offense. So now against Tennessee, can you do that in 2 full halves? Can you set yourself up for second and short, third and short? If you're able to get those second and shorts, that's the down that you do want to go deep and stretch the field. Your max protect, run 2 routes, 9 guys in there at the line of scrimmage and toss it deep on maybe a 50-50 type ball. I think that's where you want to be in Oklahoma. I think, put the right foot there forward. And I think Seth Luttrell called a really good game. Obviously those first couple drives looked great. I'd like to see that continue, and I think that will continue to get better as he gets more feel for Jackson Arnold, gets more feel for calling plays with this offense, because it's tough. It's not easy to sit up there and be able to process as much information as you need to in that short amount of time of what's down and distance, what play calls are working, what's the defense set up as. Oh, and also like what is the right rhythm for everything. So I think we're progressing in the right direction there. And anytime you have young players along the offensive line, young players at the receiver position, like Brent Venables has talked about over and over again, the more repetitions that you're able to get in live game scenarios, the better it is. And I think we saw improvements. Zion Raggins, he only had one catch, but he looked better in that. I think his blocking looked a little bit better. I think Josh Bates looked better. Still a long way to go for some of those guys, but also those guys are expected to play less this upcoming week against Tennessee, with some other guys getting back from injuries, hopefully. So I think overall, everything's moving in the right direction. And I think it's going to culminate with, like Brent Venables said earlier in his press conference today, the best 4 quarters they've played all year.
Yeah, and I want to start with Jackson Arnold, completing 18 of 29 passes for 169 yards and a touchdown. Did have the one interception. It was a tough look. The pick 6, kind of towards later part of the second half. It got Tulane back in this game. He did rush, however, 14 times for a game, a career-high 97 yards, had a couple of touchdowns. He now has 2 rushing touchdowns this season, 3 in his career. And I thought that on the offensive line, and you make a really good point. Obviously, Logan Howland got his first career start. He had a few good reps at the beginning of the game, but on a critical third down, he got beat pretty bad on the edge, resulting in a Jackson Arnold sack. So Bill pulls him. He slides Jacob Sexton back out to the left tackle where he rightfully should be. That's where he projects at the next level. He inserts Heath Ozeta at the left guard position. And Adam, I thought that the best lineup of the day altogether was when we got that lineup of Jacob Sexton, Heath Ozeta, Josh Bates, Fabici and Weewu, and Michael Tarquin at the right tackle position. We're still struggling at times when the defense blitzes of not knowing who to block and when to pass off defenders to one another. Then the pick 6 play, obviously, Ozeta blocked down to double team the nose, and the middle linebacker comes, downhill on a free rush and pressures Jackson into throwing a pretty crushing pick 6. You're not necessarily sure what it's going to look like this weekend. We've said that for 4 straight weeks now. I think it was actually George Stoya I think he tweeted out that Oklahoma has put out, it was either 7 or 9 different offensive line groups here throughout the first 3 weeks of the season. So sounds like Branson Hickman, Troy Everett, Jake Taylor are close to a return, but we won't officially know that until pregame warmups are underway. Adam, I thought you made a really good point about Seth Luttrell, the game plan, the play calling over the course of the game against Tulane. I thought that it was definitely his best overall performance as a play caller through the first 3 weeks of the season. But I also think that ties in with how well the offense executed, especially early in the game. Jackson was sharp. The offensive line was able to move some guys off the line of scrimmage. We saw some good runs from Javonte Barnes and Taylor Tatum. And I know that a lot is made of a play caller when it doesn't necessarily look like the offense, is moving the ball down the field. If they're struggling to, create positive yardage. We talk about the play where Heath Ozeta, did miss the block. Jackson throws the pick 6. Your ability as a play caller, you're kind of at the mercy of how well your guys are able to execute down there on the field. But I thought that it was a positive step in the right direction for Oklahoma. It definitely gives them something to build on as we look ahead to Tennessee here in 4 more days.
Talking a little bit about the defensive side of the ball, I think another impressive performance for Oklahoma. There's, linebacker is, I think, pretty elite play from what I'm seeing there. Cornerbacks, I think, is looking really solid. Woody Washington, I mean, he's kind of the last holdover of the Alex Grinch speedy regime there. And so, getting Kendall Dolby back, I think, is a huge help and a huge lift for this defense, because Woody Washington as a starter, don't love it. Woody Washington as a backup with that amount of experience, you take that, 8 days out of, the week. So that's something where it's like, okay, I think this defense is up for the task against Tennessee. They're not going to hold them to 13 points like they did against Tulane or anything like that. But
we're having a totally different discussion if they hold Tennessee to 13 points.
Exactly. But I think, this is a defense that's going to be able to be well equipped to maybe put up the best performance against Tennessee all year, potentially. I know they play Georgia. I know they play Alabama, but this is going to be a team that's going to say, hey, we want to stiffen our necks and say, hey, we're the best defense in the SEC. And I think they still haven't reached their ceiling yet. I think they're still going to continue to get better. And, holding a Tennessee team under 30 points would be a huge success still. So, I think they're showing me all the things that I want to see still. we're getting more of that edge pressure. Need to see more of it, in my opinion, more of
Yeah.
it come through with sacks. Wasn't until the very end that R. Mason Thomas just went supernova on everybody. But I think, again, the constant theme for me in this game is all steps in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think R. Mason Thomas, that's where you have to start on this on the defensive side of the football. You know, he came in on the last couple possessions of that game, and he essentially closed it down for Oklahoma, sealing the victory. He did register 3 tackles, all of which were sacks on Saturday. Forced fumble, a fumble recovery, 1 pass breakup, and a couple of quarterback hurries. So I thought that it was really neat, Adam, on Tulane's second to last possession, 4 plays. He recorded 2 sacks and a pass breakup. So on its last possession, spring forward a little bit, he forced a fumble and a sack, and he recovered the ball after he forced the fumble. So fantastic play. We were waiting for this version of R. Mason Thomas to, kind of have his coming out party, and what a week to do it, wrapping up the game sealing victory for Oklahoma over Tulane, and now you've got to have that type of play. You've got to have that consistently against a Tennessee offensive line that is pretty damn good, and you've got a really, really good quarterback back there that if you allow him to sit back there and stay in rhythm and take his time, he's going to pick you apart. So we're going to have another R. Mason Thomas game like we saw a week ago against the Volunteers this weekend. I think you got to give some credit to Danny Stutzman as well. Team high 12 tackles, surpassing the 300 tackle mark for his career. He got the game ball in the post game. Billy Bowman is getting a lot of praise surrounding the interception, but I actually think, Adam, that the player of the game in the secondary was Des Malone. I know that PFF had him graded as one of the highest cornerbacks in the country from this past weekend. He was absolutely fantastic. We're going to have to build on that. We're going to have to do that for another week this upcoming Saturday, Des. So, but the 3 stats that were the biggest things for me, Adam: Oklahoma held Tulane to 5 of 15 on third downs, 33%. Tulane had some really good success against Kansas State a week ago and being able to convert, keep drives alive. Oklahoma was able to shut that thing down. And then the Oklahoma defense, they ended the game by generating 3 consecutive turnovers: an interception, turnover on downs, and the fumble recovery by R. Mason Thomas. And this is the best one, Adam, and we have been waiting for something like this to actually show up in the stat line when talking about an Oklahoma defense through 3 games this season. And again, I know it's Temple, I know it's Houston, I know it's Tulane. Oklahoma has only allowed 6 scoring drives on its opponent's 38 total possessions, and only 3 of which were touchdowns. So, and I think Danny Stutzman talked about it in the media as well. All 3 touchdowns that the defense has given up has been a result of like a personal foul penalty or, pass interference or something that has prolonged the drive for the opposing team. So Oklahoma's defense is playing well. We're going to have to see that again this upcoming Saturday. And I do have one offensive thing that I want to chat with you about. So don't move ahead into volunteer discussion quite yet. So
yeah, I will say one of the touchdowns that Tulane scored was the result of going for it on 4th and I think 6 or something like that near the goal line. So that was an interesting call. If I was Tulane's coach, I would have kicked the field goal there, but they opted to be aggressive, and I helped keep them in the game. But yeah, I agree. Like, this defense doesn't necessarily. The only way that they've given up touchdowns is by beating themselves in coverage busts, in penalties, things like that so far. So I think they'll continue to clean that up. Offensively, what do you want to go with there?
Let me ask you about the running back position, because you look at the performance from this past week. Obviously, Javonte Barnes, 14 carries, 53 yards, averaged just shy of 4 yards per carry, only had a long rush of 14 yards. And then on the flip side, you look at the freshman out of Longview, Texas, the 5-star, Taylor Tatum. He carried the ball 9 times, did have 27 yards. I know that that's a slightly smaller yards per carry average than Javonte Barnes, but he did have the 1 touchdown. He did have the receiving touchdown out of the backfield to Jackson Arnold. And this was a crazy stat, Adam, that I kind of wanted to throw over to you, because now you're in a position going into conference play where you've got to really, I don't want to say you've got to shrink the running back rotation, but now DeMarco Murray, you need to go into the game this weekend where you're not, putting 3 or 4 different running backs out there over the course of a game. You've got to figure out who your top 1 or 2 guys are and really, get this thing going on Saturday. Here's the stat, Adam. After 3 games, first 3 weeks of the season, Gavin Sawchuk, 16 total carries, 35 yards, 0 touchdowns. That's a little bit more than 2 yards per carry. Taylor Tatum, 15 carries, 102 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 on the ground, 1 in the air. What am I missing here? And tell me why Taylor Tatum shouldn't be getting one of the first snaps at running back this week.
Yeah, I think the coaches will just tell you it comes down to pass protection. And I get that. Like, you don't want to tip your hand by having Tatum out there simply for running plays or RPOs only, because that's tipping the defense off on a lot of ways. So you have to be able to have him reliable in pass protection. But I agree. I think there again another step in the right direction. Like, he got more reps, he got more experience, he's got more film on tape that he can now look at and go, okay, here's what I'm supposed to be doing in pass protection, and hopefully that continues to improve there. I think I would like to see a lot more two-back sets, and maybe that's the wrinkle that this team has been saving and holding back for Tennessee, to say, hey, we're going to put Tatum out there with Barnes. Barnes is going to have pass protection, and Tatum's going to be, your receiver in those situations. And we see more of that to enable to get him more snaps, especially with the way your receiver core is hurting right now through injuries. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the good that Tatum provides, just exploding through the hole, I think he's the most likely to make that one-on-one defender miss. Javonte Barnes kind of runs to the contact and hasn't necessarily run through it quite yet. I would love to see more of a setup, and I think we get there eventually towards the second half of the season, where Tatum is kind of your early, game back, and then Barnes comes in later to finish it off once he's a little bit fresher than everybody else in the defense. But yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly there.
And we still haven't seen Caleb Hicks.
Yeah, that's so weird. It feels like he's just MIA. I don't know if he's in the doghouse or what, but yeah.
I don't know. It remains to be seen, but that's definitely something as the offensive line continues to progress. Again, it sounds like we're going to get one, maybe two guys back this week on the offensive line. We'll see if that can't spring some bigger runs, down the field for Oklahoma. But Adam, let's talk Tennessee here. Tennessee currently a 7.5-point favorite over Oklahoma. They're coming to Owen Field on Saturday night, primetime college game day. You're going to have Chris Fowler. You're going to have Kirk Herbstreit. You're going to have Ben, the Golden, down there on the field as well pregame. And this was a pretty interesting tweet, Adam. And I really, this kind of goes back to how spoiled we are as a fan base when talking about how elite, how dominant, how good Oklahoma has been, particularly playing at home over the last 25 years. Per ESPN Stats and Info, this is the first time that the Oklahoma Sooners are a touchdown home underdog since November 21st, 1998 versus Texas Tech. A ranked Oklahoma team has not been a home underdog of more than 4 points since at least 1978.
I mean, I think that speaks to the schedule that we've had over the last 15 years, because the Big 12 was very good between 2000 or even 98 to 2010. And then it fell apart. A&M left, Nebraska left, Missouri left, Colorado left, and it kind of got diluted a little bit there. So yeah, I think that's partly scheduling, but also partly just the fact of, like, Tennessee's pretty good and Oklahoma hasn't proven as much quite yet. So it's a huge game. I think the line has been betted up a little bit because in Oklahoma's minds and a lot of Oklahoma fans, I think we see this as more of like a 14.5 point spread. Whereas Vegas, you're seeing it anywhere between like 6.5, 7.5 range right now. So
I'm shocked as close as it is.
Yeah. Well, I think that's partly just being Oklahoma fans being way too close to the situation. And if we zoom out a little bit, which we'll get into here in a minute, but I think this game is a lot closer. The metrics and some of the analytics, they're predicting this game, have this game a lot closer than even that 7.5.
Yeah, you look at this Tennessee Volunteer squad. This is probably one of, if not the best, Josh Heupel team that we've seen, since he's made his way over to Knoxville. Tennessee's outscored their opponents a combined 191-13, and it's been one of the most dominant opening 3-game stretches to a season in college football history. And I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Adam. This is a damn good football team coming to Norman, Oklahoma this weekend. And in my opinion, they are on the short list as one of the top 3 or 4 teams right now that I think can seriously compete for a national championship. So I know a lot of people point to the schedule and they say that they haven't really played any real competition. They defeated Chattanooga 69-3. Chattanooga's 0-3 with losses to Georgia State and Mercer. I think they only scored 3 points against Mercer. So, take that for what it's worth right there. Tennessee, they did defeat a ranked NC State team. Go Wolfpack, Adam. On a neutral field, 51-10, but the Wolfpack have been very underwhelming to the start of this season. I'm not sure they really deserved that top 25 preseason ranking. Then you flash back to just a few days ago, Tennessee defeated Kent State 71-0. Kent State is one of the worst football teams I think I've ever watched after looking at the game tape. So they're 0-3 with their other 2 losses are by 30 points to Pitt, and then they've got a loss at home to St. Francis, Pennsylvania. And I know it's a light 3-0 record with not much substance to it, but elite teams dominate their opponents. They don't play down to their level of competition, and Tennessee has done that. each of these first 3 weeks in impressive fashion. So my question to you, and really this is a question to a lot of Oklahoma fans out there that, again, maybe they're drinking the Crimson Kool-Aid, maybe they've got the crimson colored glasses on, but um, when you look at what Tennessee has done over the first 3 weeks of the season, and people that still don't believe in Tennessee, even after watching their games, I would ask you the simple questions: what are they bad at? What are their weaknesses as a football team? Where can Oklahoma take advantage of Tennessee on Saturday night? I'm not sure there is a realistic answer to it, but that's what we're about to dive into.
Yeah, I would say, with Tennessee, obviously have a high respect for them because they have dominated who they've played. It's
Yeah.
127th seventh ranked strength of schedule right now. So, I don't know if there are any Tennessee fans that are going to end up watching or listening to this. Again, I have a high respect for Tennessee. I'm not saying that they're bad or anything like that, but I feel like we just still don't know what they are, because 2 years ago, we were front row witnesses to what Oklahoma did when Brent Venables had his first year. We dominated UTEP. We beat Kent State pretty handily. We went on the road to a Power 5 team in Nebraska, got a big win there, and everyone was going, playoffs. We come back home. We lose to a K-State team that had lost to, I think, was it Tulane or Arkansas State the week before? I think it was Tulane.
Yeah.
And then we were all kind of like, well, what happened there? Like, we thought we were good. We thought there were no weaknesses because our defense had looked elite at Nebraska and elsewise. So I just think this Nebraska team, or this Tennessee team, it hasn't been tested yet. We don't know what their weaknesses are because they haven't played anybody that's actually capable of producing them. So credit to Tennessee for absolutely annihilating those teams and taking care of business. But I think Vegas agrees with me here that we don't know exactly what Tennessee is in a true road environment against the defense. Oklahoma limits their team's rushing yards to about half of what NC State did. So there's a pretty big difference between what Tennessee has faced in their first 3 games versus what they're going to face in Oklahoma. I think it's up to Oklahoma to say, hey, we are continually, leaps and bounds getting better each week because we're getting healthier. We're getting more reps for those guys that weren't getting first or second team reps at the beginning of fall camp. So I think Oklahoma is rapidly improving because they also know what their weaknesses are versus Tennessee that maybe hasn't had those exposed quite yet.
Yeah, you look at this prolific, high-powered, Tennessee offense that's coming to Norman on Saturday night. Number 1 in the country in points per game, averaging just over 63 points. Number 2 in the country in total yards per game, averaging about 640 yards a game. For comparison, Oklahoma has failed to reach 400 total yards of offense each of the first 3 weeks. So Tennessee is also number 3 in the country in rushing yards per game, just a hair over 330. And they're also a very balanced attack with Nico averaging just over 303 passing yards through the air. So very balanced attack, very prolific, very high-powered offense that likes to use tempo to be able to take advantage of some deficiencies on the defensive side of the football for their opponent. It all starts at the quarterback position. Obviously, that's the storyline surrounding this game. Jackson Arnold versus Nico. Nico starting the year off completing 72% of his passes, almost 700 yards, 6 touchdowns, did throw a couple of picks against NC State. Arguably has the best arm talent in college football. Maybe outside of Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers, I think that he's right up there neck and neck with them. I think that he probably throws the prettiest deep ball in America so far this season, given he's a freshman. It's his first start on the road in what's going to be a hostile environment against a Brent Venables defense that is by far and away the best that he is going to have faced since he's been a starter for the Vols. And I think a lot of people forget to realize as well, he started, I believe, the same amount of games in his college career as Jackson Arnold. He got the start in the bowl game last year against Iowa, and what was a pretty good performance. I think he was actually the MVP of the bowl game, but he's still brand new to this as well. We're just barely scratching the surface on what Nico could possibly become, so that's going to be a fun matchup to see how the youngster handles it in a high-pressure situation with the eyes of the nation, on Norman, Oklahoma, to watch how this kid performs. But his best friend on Saturday night is going to be this Tennessee rushing attack, Adam. It all starts with number 6, Dylan Sampson. Not the biggest guy in the world, 5'11", 200 pounds, but he is a really impressive back who's got the complete package. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's physical, and he's averaging 8 yards per carry and already has 9 touchdowns through the first 3 weeks of the season. So Oklahoma's front 7 has got to figure out a way to bottle him up and not let him go untouched into the second level of that defense. And the backup's pretty good as well. Deshaun Bishop, 5'10", 200 pounds, same stature. I think last week against Kent State, which given it was Kent State, one of the worst football teams in America, 7 carries for 120 yards, a couple of touchdowns, including a 52-yarder that he took to the house as well. So without even getting to the skill position talent at the tight end spot and the wide receiver core, this is going to be a pretty solid test for Oklahoma's defense, particularly the front 7 that we're going to face on Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with Tennessee's 1-2 punch at the running back position. They've taken the pressure completely off of, and I'm not afraid to say it, Nico Iamaleava. And so we really still don't know what he is under pressure not necessarily in a blitz perspective, but in a pressure situation where it's 3rd and 8, he's got to convert, game on the line, because against Iowa, that game was never in doubt. Against NC State, game was never in doubt because they were able to run the ball so effectively throughout the season. Kent State might have the slowest defense maybe I've ever seen on tape. So credit to Tennessee. They should absolutely have done what they did to Kent State on the ground. They were probably going for like 15 yards a carry, it seemed like. So they're going to see something pretty different when they're facing Oklahoma, a team that is very experienced defensively, has a lot of speed. And I think, if they get the help offensively that we're looking for, this defense is going to be fresh. I think we're too deep in most positions. So it's not like they're going to be able to wear Oklahoma down unless our offense doesn't give us the help that we need there. So it's going to be something very different that we haven't seen, that we can't quite measure and say exactly how Tennessee will be able to respond. And especially how Nico Iamaleava is going to be able to respond when he has to convert a 3rd down.
I think something that's worth talking about too, going into this matchup, and again, based on who Tennessee has played through the first 3 weeks of the season, how dominant they've been coming out of the gate, putting this game out of reach after the first quarter. I think Nico, he played 3 quarters against NC State. He played 25 minutes, I believe, in last week's game, and he played 1 quarter in the first game of the year. So he's yet to put together 60 minutes of football in a high-pressure situation on the road. So again, that remains to be seen how well this youngster can, handle the pressure going on the road at a place like Oklahoma. It's going to be 85, 86,000 fans. We'll talk about the crowd. We'll talk about the student section here in just a little bit, Adam, because I know that, you definitely have an opinion on that because you were there for the game this past weekend. But I think that the wide receiver position is going to be very pivotal for Tennessee in this one, because I think that Oklahoma is going to make a concerted effort on Saturday night from the jump to where we're going to line up and we're going to stop the run. We're not going to allow you to, just simply be able to push us off the football to where you're able to be multiple on offense. You can be able to, pound the rock. You can, make plays down the field in the passing game. I think Brent Venables and Zach Alley, their mindset going into this matchup is we're going to do anything and everything that we can to stop the run, and we're going to force Nico to prove that he can beat us out on the perimeter for 4 quarters. So they've got the playmakers to be able to do it. Obviously, Brew McCoy is a name that college football fans will remember. It kind of feels like he's been all over the place. He's been playing football for a decade. Dante Thornton Jr., he's averaging 34 yards per catch. He's got a couple of scores this year. Chris Brazel's got a touchdown catch. Squirrel White, fantastic name. He's averaging over 21 yards per reception as well. And then the tight end position, very athletic guy, Miles Kitzelman. He's got a couple of touchdown catches as well. So Josh Heupel. This Tennessee offense has the ability to hurt you, I think, in any way possible. If you load the box, they spit it out wide to their playmakers, and they force you to tackle one-on-one in space. If you try to give help in the running game, or if you try to give help out wide on the perimeter, then they'll run it with Sampson and Bishop. And they haven't really shown it much, but they do a pretty good job of having the ability to get Nico involved in the quarterback run game. And the tempo in which Josh Heupel and this offense likes to operate with, it rivals what Jeff Lebby did, for the last couple of seasons at Oklahoma. And even at times, it seems like it's even a little bit faster. So this is a massive, massive test for the Sooners.
Kind of surprisingly, I think I buy the Tennessee defense more than the offense at this point, because I think that NC State actually had playmakers that could test, the Vols defense. And man, they stepped up big time against Jordan Waters, the running back from NC State. Grayson McCall, I'm not as big on as maybe some around the country are, but Kevin Concepcion, the wide receiver, is a good player. So they basically bottled up that offense from the Wolfpack there. And so I'm a little bit more impressed with the defense at this point because I think they've been tested a little bit more there. So that's kind of the thing that makes me a little bit nervous. This Vols defense is great at stopping the run. And, so far we're incrementally getting better at running the ball, but Branson Hickman would help a lot. Troy Everett returning would help a lot. More Taylor Tatum, like we've discussed, probably would help a lot. But obviously we have our concerns going into this one and facing a really good defense in Tennessee here.
Yeah, like I alluded to, Adam, Oklahoma's offense has failed to rack up 400 yards of total offense in the first 3 weeks of the season, and that's against Temple, Tulane, and Houston. And now you're going to be going up against by far the best defense that you've seen this year, perhaps one of the best defenses in the country. And the numbers certainly back that up for the Vols through the first 3 weeks of the season. Third in the country in points allowed, just over 4. Second in the country in yards allowed at about 160 yards per game. Their front seven might be the best that they've had in Knoxville in a long time. This will be the best collection of defensive linemen I think that Oklahoma has maybe played since the 2018, 2019 playoff games against Alabama and LSU, if you want to go that far back. And I think that the depth of the defensive line down there at Tennessee is definitely the best that they've had in a long, long time. And it all starts out there on the edge with number 27, James Pierce. If you look at any and all of the NFL mock drafts that are out there right now, this guy is a consensus top 5 pick. Pierce is fresh. He's ready to go. I think he's only played 10 and 14 snaps in a couple of games this year, and he's played less than 50 plays total through the first 3 weeks of the season. So you got to know that he's he's kind of like a caged animal. He's ready to get off the leash and get out there. And I guarantee you, when he's watching that tape and he's looking at what Oklahoma's put out there on film, whether it's Logan Howland, Michael Tarquin, Jacob Sexton a little bit as well, that Tennessee front seven, they are licking their chops with what could potentially happen on Saturday night. And they've got a couple of really good interior guys as well. Number 55, Omar Norman Lott, 6'3", 315 pounds. Number 20, Bryson Eaton, 6'3", 310 pounds. And then obviously number 42. It's kind of weird seeing a defensive tackle wearing a linebacker jersey number, but obviously Tyree West, 6'3", 290. A lot of beef up front there. And they do a tremendous job, Adam, of stopping the run. A very physical group. They're big, they're fast, they're mean. And the thing that this matchup ultimately boils down for me, and we've said our piece on Oklahoma's defense against Tennessee's offense, but when you look at Oklahoma's offense and what the plan of attack is to try and move the football, and everybody says, well, you've got to establish the run game. When your deficiencies are the opposition's biggest strength, that's a bad recipe for success. The best part of Tennessee's defense by far and away is their defensive line. What's the worst part of OU's football team right now? It's the offensive line. So depending on how quickly we can get healthy this week, if we get Branson Hickman back, if we get Troy Everett back, this is going to be a very, very tough ask for Josh Bates to be able to go out there in what's going to be, I believe, his second career start at Oklahoma, and he's got to face this volunteer front seven. I'll turn it back over to you. I'm not liking what I'm seeing and how ugly this could potentially get.
Yeah, I'll respond to you here in a second. I know we got a question in the chat there from Brian asking about our corners and whether they can hold up on the outside. I think that's all dependent on how good the front seven can stop the run. Because if they're able to do that, I think our corners will hold up really well. Maybe we can hold Nico under 250 passing yards potentially at that point, because you're able to play to, you're able to, I guess, form the offense into what you want them to do and control that. But if we're not able to stop the run, I think the corners will have a long day. As far as offensive line, yeah, I think James Pierce is going to get a lot of guys chewed out on the sideline by Bill Bedenbaugh. In terms of, this offensive line, I think we haven't seen another team really beat them quite yet. They've been beating themselves constantly because they're not assignment sound. We've had our fourth string center playing constantly. We've had second string guards, second string tackles, third string tackles playing quite a bit. Looks like we're solidifying ourselves a little bit more there. And I think either Branson Hickman or Troy Everett will be available for this game. So I think we'll make a big step in the right direction there. And here's another thing people don't want to hear. They don't want to hear that Houston is a top 15 defense in the country right now. So it's not like everybody's scoring 60 on the Cougars, but 16 points also not acceptable there at the same time. So yes, I think it's slowly coming together for Oklahoma. And I think, again, like Brent said, like he's expecting his best 4 quarters of play out of this team this Saturday. And I think we'll see that. I think we're going to get better with Nick Anderson coming back. It sounds like Jackson Arnold basically confirmed that. By the time a lot of people listen or watch this show, the injury report may be out. We may know more about Branson Hickman, for example. But even if it's Josh Bates, I still think we're going to improve. I don't think he's going to be the answer. I think if he's starting, then we're in deep trouble there. But I still think we'll see improvement because week over week over week, guys improve. They get more reps. They get more film that they're able to study and improve on. And we saw that. We saw that between Houston and Tulane. I expect to see that again between Tulane and Tennessee, despite playing what I think is probably the most surprising and most valid side of the football for Tennessee.
Yeah, and back to Brian's question here on whether or not we feel that Oklahoma's corners can hold up in coverage out on the outside. And I think a lot of that has to do with the game plan that Brent Venables and Zach Allen are going to put together and how aggressive are they wanting to be, particularly within the front seven. Obviously, we know that they're going to load up in the box for at least, I think, early and often to try and stop the run game, to try and take Tennessee's running backs out of this, to where it does force Nico to kind of be one-dimensional as an offense and really put him in a position where he has to make plays down the field. It does sound like we're not going to be getting Gentry Williams back, Oklahoma's best corner, anytime soon. So you're going to be forced to rely on guys like Kenai Walker, like Des Malone, like Jacoby Johnson, and maybe even the true freshman Eli Bowen, who got a pretty decent amount of snaps last week against Tulane. But again, Des Malone, Kenai Walker, they've been very good. But on the flip side of that, if you go back and you roll the tape, particularly from the Houston matchup and the game last week against Tulane, those two opponents, they missed some throws against Oklahoma secondary. There were times when those guys, the wide receivers, were able to kind of get behind Oklahoma's defense, the back end of that defense as well. So Nico's going to be able to maybe hit some of those throws that Tulane and Houston weren't able to. So again, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You just kind of have to hope that you can stop the run, you can pin your ears back, you can make Nico uncomfortable, get him off of his mark, and maybe you force him into a couple of turnovers, but you at least have to sell out to where you at least try to make Nico uncomfortable, and maybe you can force a couple of turnovers as well. So it's going to be interesting.
Anything else on the offensive side of the ball, or do you want to talk about the crowd?
We'll save the crowd for a second. My question to you, Adam, and I'll go first on this, that way you can think about it. The biggest question right now, I think, surrounding the Oklahoma fan base, you check social media, you check the message boards. The national media has completely written Oklahoma off here. They think that Tennessee is going to come into town. They're going to beat Oklahoma's ass, and they're going to get back on the plane back to Knoxville. I'm kind of in the same line of thinking, but I guess my question is, what does Oklahoma have to do to have a chance to win this game on Saturday night? If you're Oklahoma, you have to take one thing away, or you're going to have absolutely no shot of shutting them down. You've got to stop the run, make Nico beat you. I know as a 5-star that can make every throw on the field, but you have to make him prove that he can do that in his first road start in a hostile environment. Your best chance, stop the run, make Nico hold on to that ball a little bit longer than he wants to, even if it's a fraction of a second. When he's on rhythm, it's game over with the weapons that he has at the skill position. And Adam, interesting enough here, Nico has only been sacked one time in the first 3 weeks of the season. So he did throw a couple of picks against NC State. You've got to get after him. You've got to be aggressive. You've got to try and light his ass up and get home. So we all know that Brent Venables and Zach Allen, what they could do as defensive masterminds. They're going to have the best game plan possible for Oklahoma. Now it's just a matter of if they can execute it, and is Oklahoma strong enough up front to do it for 4 quarters?
Yeah, I agree with you. You do have to stop the run, and it sounds weird, but make Nico beat you because we still, again, we don't know exactly how elite he is. We think he's elite, but we need to see it against a better defense to really truly determine that and start saying, hey, this is a Heisman caliber guy. And maybe he proves that on Saturday, and he just, no matter what Oklahoma throws at him, he's able to just toss it around the yard. Yeah. But we've also seen this Oklahoma defense be very opportunistic with turnovers, flipping the field, short fields for the offense. But I think one thing that no one's really talking about quite yet is how good this defense has been in the red zone. They were especially good last year on the goal line. And so I don't care if Oklahoma gives up a 30-yard, bomb, and Tennessee's knocking on the door.
It's going to happen.
Oklahoma just gives up a field goal. Yeah, it's going to happen. Tennessee's going to get theirs, here and there. But if this defense holds to a field goal, or maybe Tennessee is a little greedy and goes for it on 4th and 2, and Oklahoma holds, for example, well, like, what good did that 30-yard bomb do at that point? So I'm not too concerned about what they're doing between the 20s. It's once you get inside that red zone and that field shortens, it gets a lot tougher for Nico and that offense. And so it's like, hey, if Oklahoma can just capitalize, don't get run over in the red zone, hold to as many field goals as possible, Oklahoma has a much better chance at winning this game, because I do think the offense will continue to improve. And if we're counting on Branson Hickman or Troy Everett coming back and playing center, we're making a big step in the right direction with that comboed with Nick Anderson. So I think things will continue to open up for this offense.
Yeah, and I think you've got to win the turnover battle as well. And
Oh,
Oklahoma,
absolutely.
I believe they're in the top 2 or 3 in the country right now in turnover
Number
margin.
2 +8 compared to
+8.
Tennessee that is
So
+1.
that type of effort and production on defense, that's got to continue on Saturday night for Oklahoma. So win the turnover battle, win the field position battle. I think that Luke
Yeah.
Elzinga is a huge weapon on Saturday for Oklahoma. Brent talked about it in his press conference today. They've got to win the middle eight, the last 4 of the first half, the first 4 of the second half. So not only do you have to get off to a good start, get the crowd behind you as well, but you've got to close out strong in the first half, and you've got to come out, especially on offense, which has kind of been it's kind of been something that Oklahoma has struggled with through the first 3 weeks of the season, where they might play well for stretches in the first half, but when they come out at halftime, when you expect adjustments to have been made by Seth Luttrell and the rest of this offensive coaching staff, they kind of stub their toe a little bit, and they're unable to get themselves out of neutral for a huge portion of the third quarter. So win the middle eight. Jackson's legs have got to be a factor, and they have to make some big plays through the air in the passing game. I'm looking at you, Deion Burks. I'm looking at you, Nick Anderson. We haven't seen you for 3 weeks now. We've heard from a lot from behind the scenes that you've been ready to go. You've been chomping at the bit for the last couple of weeks. There's not a better week or a better opportunity for you to kind of come back and reintroduce yourself to the country that you're one of the premier wide receivers in college football. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge opportunity for Oklahoma on Saturday, and this is either going to be one of those moments where maybe we rise to the occasion, to where everybody's counting us out. We're a huge underdog at home for the first time since '98, and you just kind of have to wonder, Adam, what's the crowd going to be like?
Yeah, I hope it's. I think everyone understands the situation that Oklahoma's
No
in.
excuse. You have no
Yeah.
excuse.
No excuse. And I feel like things have been kind of building for the fan base, waiting for that first SEC game, even before we knew that it was Tennessee. And so I do expect Oklahoma fans to just absolutely let loose. It should be pandemonium at times. And I think that's the same reason that a week from this upcoming Saturday, we're all looking at Auburn going, man, that's going to be a dogfight. Not because Auburn's necessarily good. They're not really a very good football team. But we know what it's like to go play on a road in a big stadium with a raucous crowd that just cares, And so Oklahoma's kind of been waiting for that big opponent to come in for years, really. TCU was the last top 10 team to come play in Norman. That was 2017. That was our first year that you and I were working in the ticket office there at Oklahoma. So that's how long ago that was. We were youngsters then. And so it's kind of been building up. I think Oklahoma fans are ready to let it out. And so I'm excited to see. I think it's going to be a big difference maker because the crowd at Oklahoma just hasn't been great for the most part for the last 15 years. And now we have a reason to be a difference maker. I wish it would have happened earlier, but I'll take it.
Are you attributing that to the Big 12 schedule and the lackluster opponents that are coming in? You got Baylor, you got Iowa State, you've got Texas Tech. Because I think that's almost a little bit of a cop out.
It is.
I think that it's a spoiled fan base.
Yeah.
And again, call a spade a spade. We've been spoiled at a fan base for the better part of the last 2 decades. We've been one of the most dominant programs in college football. Winning is a second habit at Oklahoma. So, you looked out there on Saturday where Oklahoma, was in a 10-point game against Tulane midway through the third quarter, and the student section is almost entirely empty. Adam, we know from our time, working in the athletic department, we have season ticket holders. I still communicate with a season ticket holder that's damn near 80. And he sat out there in the heat for 4 quarters cheering Oklahoma on. I know that there's other ways that you can watch the game. I know the bars are open. I know, the fraternities, the sororities. I know I understand the college life, but you get 6 or 7 of these a year. I don't care what the opponent is. Show up. Be loud, be proud, and go out there and create a ruckus home environment that is really could be a disadvantage to the opposition. And I can promise you, we've seen it in 2008 with Texas Tech. And I'm not saying that this has to be a jump around type game, but as a home crowd, you have the opportunity and the ability to really have an impact on this football game. So we've heard it nonstop. Oklahoma going into the SEC, this has been in the makings for the last couple of years. You've got Tennessee coming to town, arguably a top 5 team in college football. Josh Heupel's coming back. You got a redshirt freshman making his first start on the road. You've got arguably a top 5, top 10 defense statistically right now in Oklahoma that is begging for you. Danny Stutzman talked about it yesterday. Bring the juice. College game day's coming. Pate's coming. Ben the dog is coming. You're
Burton's
on prime
coming.
time. Burton's coming. Prime time, national TV audience. You got all day to get liquored up, to get yourself juiced up, ready to go. Let's create one hell of an atmosphere on Saturday, and let's see if we can't make a difference for this football team.
This is the opportunity for Oklahoma fans to say it does mean more. It means more than being at the house party. It means more than being at Campus Corner. If drinking means that you pass out and you can't stay in the stands, it's got to mean more than that. Like, you got to do whatever prep or planning.
Start hydrating now.
Start hydrating now. It doesn't matter. I know it's a night game, but like, we all know what the weather's going to be before we go into the stadium. Like, prepare in a way that you can be there for 4 quarters and support your team. Supporting your team has to mean more than anything else that's going on. That beating traffic. If you leave early to beat traffic, I hope you hit every red light on Highway 9. Like, I hope your life is miserable. We gotta jump into some best bets. Before we jump in there, I will highlight, if you want to put your score prediction in the chat, let us know there. We'll highlight those in a moment as we go through our score predictions to round out the show. But Tyler, let's get into our best bets. Before we jump into that, we have to address, I am 4-11 on the year. If you would bet $100 picking the opposite of all my games this year, you would be up about $1,700. So there's your free money doing that, I guess.
But keep coming back, though. You keep coming back for more.
We'll see. The troops are not on my card this week. I'm at odds with the troops. They keep letting me down. We'll see if we come back to that later. But Tyler, you are in the lead here with, I believe, a 7-8 overall record.
Yeah.
So we'll give you the opportunity to give the first pick.
I guess I need to get back into a habit of actually picking games on my card that I'm actually betting on Saturdays. So pick number 1 for me, we're going down to College Station, Texas. Bowling Green going on the road to take on the Aggies. A&M's currently a 22.5-point favorite. And I think the Texas A&M, I think they were playing the wrong quarterback when the season got underway. I think that they found something in Marcel Reed. Obviously, it was against the Florida Gators, but again, anytime that you've got a guy going on the road to make one of his earliest starts in college in the swamp, Marcel Reed was fantastic. And again, I know the Bowling Green, they kind of took Penn State down to the wire in week 2, I believe is what it was. But I think the Texas A&M combined with that defense, with what they can do now at the offensive, skill positions combined with Marcel Reed, I think A&M covers that 22.5 number pretty easily.
That one seems oddly low. It feels like it should be a lot higher. So I agree with you there. I'm going to go with a little bit of a zag when everyone's zigging here. And this strategy has worked for me in the past. Florida State -2.5 hosting Cal. This is one that it's like Florida State's
I can't wait to hear this.
Florida State's 0-3 against the spread. They've already, lost every reason that they have to play. Like, they can't get any lower than they are now. They are at rock bottom. The only way they have to go is up. Cal, on the other hand, they've already had kind of a good moment beating Auburn on the road. Then they travel back to play San Diego State late Saturday night. Now they're going to travel back on the road to the other side of the country. I feel like that does have an effect at some point, and Cal doesn't have necessarily to arrive in this moment. They come in, I think, even though Florida State is the betting favorite, I think Cal is kind of the people's favorite and maybe the favorite in their own mind. So at some point, I'm just betting on Florida State to be able to get a win, to have superior athletes, which they still will against Cal. I'm just betting on this is the moment that it kind of comes together because Florida State has absolutely nothing to lose at this point.
Adam, I'm comparing this situation for you to a guy that's been standing at the roulette table and the ball has fallen on red for the last 15 times straight. And you're thinking there's no way that it's not going to go black. So you have to bet the opposite side here. So we'll see how that pays off for you. Pick number 2 for me, I'm going out to the Big Ten country, USC, going up to Ann Arbor to take on Michigan in the Big House. USC currently a 5.5-point favorite, which is not something that I thought I would be saying, 2 or 3 months ago. But this is a situation where Michigan, they benched their starting quarterback. They are starting now Alex Orji, who is not that good of a thrower of the football, predominantly a running quarterback. So I think that they're going to try and ride the legs of Donovan Edwards. They're going to try and get the quarterback run game to be, a key factor, maybe a difference maker for the Wolverines. But I still don't think that they're going to be able to match USC's offense shot for shot here. So the fact that I can get this less than a touchdown, I know it's Lincoln Riley in a big game on the road, but I still think that USC does enough to cover that 5.5 number.
That point spread has swung 14 points since before the season. So those two teams heading in opposite directions. I had that one on my card, and then Alex Orji being named the starter kind of just felt like the wild card that I don't know if I felt comfortable with that one. I'm going to go with a quarterback that likes chaos, and that's Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. They're traveling on the road 21.5 point underdogs at Missouri. This is the environment that Diego Pavia thrives in. I know they lost to Georgia State a week ago, but when the lights are brightest, that's when Diego Pavia really just makes other teams miserable. So that hanging half point there on the 21.5, I like the Commodores to be able to give Mizzou some trouble.
I like it. Pick number 3 for me, Adam. This one is just solely because of you and your affiliation with your former school. East Carolina going on the road to take on Liberty. Flames currently a 6.5-point favorite. Give me Liberty to cover. Plain and simple.
I did not feel that confident in that. And when you texted me that you were changing that pick, I thought you were joking. So I did not update our graphic. I will have an incorrect pick that will show for those here on YouTube for you on that one. But go Flames. I like that one. My number 3, I'm going to the Iron Skillet here. TCU going across town to play SMU. Horned Frogs 2.5-point favorites. I'll take them to cover there. SMU finally settling on one quarterback, but I just don't think that they have the playmakers that they've had in years past. And I think TCU can run up the score a little bit here. So I'll take the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, that was one that when I first saw that, I thought, okay, that's got to be a trap. TCU minus 2.5. That's almost too good to be true. So I stayed away from that one. Pick number 4 for me. I'm staying in the Big 12. Utah coming down here to the state of Oklahoma, going to Stillwater to take on Mike Gundy and the Pokes. I got this thing at Utah plus 1.5. And so I know that there's a huge difference right now on the current status of Cam Rising, whether or not he's going to be starting for the Utes. But I think that there was a pretty good chance he could have played last week, but they just simply didn't need him to beat Utah State. So I think that he comes back. This is a much different football team when you've got Cam Rising, at the quarterback position. I think they go into Stillwater and they actually not only do they, cover the plus 1.5, but I would take them money line as well. I think Utah goes into Stillwater and gets the win.
I actually am going the opposite direction on that one. So same game. I'm
Really?
picking Oklahoma State to cover the 1.5 here. This is one that Oklahoma State, Arkansas, you can look at that and go, okay, maybe Oklahoma State's not as good as we thought, but overall, that's kind of what Oklahoma State does under Mike Gundy. They underperform against teams they should be able to handle pretty easily. And then against teams that should give them trouble, they actually play really well. So I know Cam Rising has a little bit of an injury with the finger on his throwing hand there. I think Oklahoma State has far more playmakers here, not necessarily Ollie Gordon, but what Alan Bowman's shown in the passing game. And Boone Pickens Stadium should be rocking for this one. So I think the Cowboys get off to a really good start in conference play here, and Utah has a little bit of learning curve as they enter a new conference.
Adam, typically we make it a point to not have the Oklahoma game as one of our 5 bets on our cards, but we're actually, both of us are going to go against the grain on this one. And we actually both have this game on our card, but we're on totally opposite sides of this. So this will kind of lead us into our score predictions. Adam, tell us what you got here. Tennessee at Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm not going with full game spread. I'm going with just the first quarter, which is a little risky because it could come down to how the coin toss goes essentially here. But Oklahoma has been at its best offensively in the first quarter. And I think that's when Oklahoma's defense will have the most success against this Tennessee offense. The crowd will be probably at its peak loudest at that point. I think it will be tougher for Tennessee to lean on the run game. So I'm picking Oklahoma to cover plus 1.5 in the first quarter. I think Oklahoma can at least come out of that first quarter tied or potentially in the lead. I think it's really in those later quarters where you start to see, okay, what does this offense look like after Seth Luttrell's scripted plays have run out? What does it look like after this Oklahoma defense might be tired? That's where my bigger concerns are. But in the first quarter, I think Oklahoma can keep this one either tied or be in the lead.
If you win the coin toss, you take the ball or you defer? Because to me, I think you defer. I think you put your best unit out there, your defense, and you count on Danny Stutzman in that group to be able to go out there and get you a stop. Flip the possession.
Yeah, you immediately get the field position opportunity there, and those last middle 4 minutes, middle 8 minutes that you were talking about earlier, having the opportunity to change the game by getting the ball first in the second half. That's what you'd like to do.
All right, well, pick number 5 for me. I'm sticking with this game as well. Tennessee currently a 6.5-point favorite right now. Some betting odds, some sports books, you can get it all the way up to 7.5, but I've got it right here at Tennessee minus 6.5. I think that in this matchup, Adam, I think that this is going to be a good crowd. I think that this is going to be a fantastic environment, and this is going to be a tough situation that Nico and this Tennessee football team is going to walk into. And I think that the reason why I'm picking Tennessee minus 6.5 has more to do with the deficiencies that Oklahoma has on the offensive side of the football. And while I think that Oklahoma's defense is going to be able to keep them in this game for a limited amount of time, at the end of the day, I trust Tennessee's offense way more than I trust Oklahoma's from what I've seen through the first 3 weeks of the season. So Oklahoma needs help from Tennessee to win this game. Tennessee is going to have to turn the ball over a couple of times. And then in special teams, you have to dominate the field position and you've got to create points because of it. So if Tennessee is playing good and Oklahoma is playing good, Tennessee wins this thing by double digits. So you've got to catch Tennessee on an off day. You've got to pressure Nico. You got to force him into some bad situations. You've got to create a couple of turnovers. And then Jackson Arnold and this offensive line have to play their best game of the year, bar none. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think I trust Tennessee a little bit more in this situation. And again, I'm going to be there on Saturday night. I'll be cheering like hell, like they say in the group. I will not walk into work on Monday with a voice, but at this point in Oklahoma's program with where they're at and how banged up they are on the offensive line, Tennessee 41, Oklahoma 20.
A little bit more optimism in the chat there as far as what Oklahoma's able to do. Jamie Satterfield has Oklahoma 30-27. Jay Fez has Oklahoma by a point, 24-23. And then Brian has Oklahoma by a field goal, 31-28. That's more optimism than I've seen pretty much across the internet from Oklahoma fans. I think a lot of people are expecting this to be a Tennessee win. For me, I'm a little bit more optimistic here because I do think that Tennessee is walking into a situation that they haven't experienced this year. They haven't seen anything like the Oklahoma defense. They haven't played in a road environment the way Oklahoma has. We haven't seen Nico go up in a challenging situation. So it is a buzzsaw in the sense that Tennessee is walking into something that's very unusual. They haven't defeated that yet. Maybe they come in and they're able to completely disassemble the buzzsaw and they walk out, victorious in big fashion potentially. But I think this game will be tighter because it'll challenge Tennessee in ways that we just don't know that they're able to overcome quite yet. They might be able to prove that they are, but I think Oklahoma, with the crowd behind them, with the night atmosphere and the environment and the way that this team is really trending in the right direction there, I think Oklahoma will give Tennessee a big fight here. And I initially had something that was, more like 14, 15, 20 points or so victory for Tennessee, but I've slowly inched a little bit closer there. I still have Tennessee covering the spread. I've got Tennessee 34, Oklahoma 24. I think the thing that would give me more confidence, and we saw a little bit of it last week, but not quite enough. I would have liked to have seen the tempo of the offense slow even more, especially when you've got a young quarterback that you can communicate with up to 15 seconds left in the play clock, and you're not allowing that communication to occur because you're snapping the ball so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Shown me that and said, hey, we can shorten this game. We can shorten the amount of possessions and snaps that Nico Iamaleava has on the other side of the ball. I'd feel a lot better. I may have felt good enough to even predict an upset there, but I don't think Oklahoma is going to play the type of game offensively that will help the defense succeed against Tennessee. So for that reason, I think the Vols are going to win. But again, I'd love to be.
It's been pretty rare through the first 3 weeks of the season. Oklahoma has been able to play complementary football for all four quarters, and I don't think that this is the week where that starts. And I think as good as Oklahoma's defense is going to play, they're going to keep Oklahoma in this, I think, into the second half. But we know that Josh Heupel, as many good things as he wants to say in his press conference about, his time in Oklahoma, and we love Josh. Obviously, he's the last quarterback to win us a national championship. The things that he did for this program, I think that he is just as responsible, kind of on the same wavelength as Bob Stoops, to where he kind of brought Oklahoma back out of the dark age that was the late 90s. So again, I fully expect that Josh Heupel should get an ovation on Saturday. I think he's earned that. It's going to be nice to see him back on Owen Field. But as well as I think Oklahoma's defense is going to be able to play, I still think that he still has some bitter feelings on how he was shown the door after that, the Russell Athletic Bowl when he got fired. So I think that this is going to be a close game, into the fourth quarter, but I think that he doesn't take his foot off the gas. I think that Tennessee scores 10 or 14 points late to kind of make this thing look a little bit worse than it actually is. So again, we've seen crazier things, Adam. We know that Sooner Magic, it is alive and well. It shows up at the craziest, sometimes the most, unpredictable times, whether it was the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans or, 2015 in Knoxville. Again, we'll see what actually happens, but I cannot wait for this. It's the biggest matchup in well over a decade. I'm fired up. I cannot wait to see what this environment's going to look like. And again, Oklahoma fans out there listening to this, we're in the SEC now. It just means more. Show that we're ready and able and willing to do whatever it takes as a fan base to cheer this team on to a win.
Regardless of the outcome, we'll be back next week to rehash this, to look ahead to Auburn and everything else that's going on in the world of Oklahoma football and Oklahoma sports in general. But we appreciate everyone for making us a part of your weekly routine, and we'll see y'all next week for the next episode of The Main Line.